All right. Well, welcome to Roots of Reality Experiences. I'm joined by Dr. Reza Ovissipour, who is an assistant professor of food safety and cellular agriculture at Virginia Tech University. His research focuses on cellular agriculture and alternative proteins. Lastly, his research has been published in numerous academic journals. So, Dr. Reza Ovissipour, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Ben, for inviting me to be here today. Just call me Reza, and it's a great pleasure to be here today.
Great. So how'd you first get interested in the world of cellular agriculture and alternative proteins?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been always working on developing some technologies for enhancing or improving the food sustainability. That was always my concern. The first PhD that I did in 2005 to 2010, my first PhD was mainly focusing on the waste stream from the seafood industry because they are producing or generating so much waste when they are processing the seafood products. And I wanted to kind of develop so many different types of valuable products from them. And we were really successful. We were able to have so many patents, startup companies, and developing so many different products that they are right now in the market. But so that's been always my concern. I have been always trying to do something new, something that is going to help the society or our planet, I would say. So and in 2015, I was attending one of the IFT conferences. And that was the first time that I heard about the cellular agriculture and this first cell-based burger. And so I attended the presentation. It was really amazing. So many people, they were sitting there and they were criticizing the topic. And I thought, no, this is the future. I really like the idea. It was in my mind until 2017 that I wanted to focus on this topic. But then in 2018, I transferred myself from UC Davis as a postdoc to Virginia Tech as an assistant professor. Then I said, so I'm going to develop my career based on cellular agriculture. And I just started working with different institutions, including the Good Food Institute. They supported my research first time. And then little by little, we were able to get into the field.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. So what exactly is then like cellular agriculture?
So cellular agriculture is one of the terms. Many people, they use different terms for the synthetic food, in vitro food, lab-grown meat, cell-cultured seafood, different types of, terms are being used these days by different, people, different agencies, different part of the world. But all of them, they are based on one simple thing. Instead of killing the animal for harvesting their meat, we just take or harvest a little bit of their body without really killing these animals. We just take a couple of cells from them, transfer them to the lab, and then we start developing some cell line. We call them a stem cell line that they can be converted to muscle cells or fat cells. And then we transfer them to the reactor, we grow them, differentiate them, we put them together, and here we go. So we have the cells. Instead of feeding the feed to the live animal and then keeping them for a couple of months or a couple of years, depending on the type of the animal, and then killing them. So we just feed the cells and we harvest the cells. And the animals, they are there. Everyone is happy.
It's like no death. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it is interesting because I think like one of the things that really fascinates me about this topic is because, I feel like if we're looking at the historical perspective of like human civilization, I feel like it very well could be in the future, if something like this really takes off and becomes popular, that, like 1,000 years from now, people could be looking at the practice of slaughtering animals as like this barbaric thing. Because they look like, I can't believe people used to, kill animals and stuff like that. They weren't able to grow it in a lab or something, and produce meat. Is that something that you kind of think about when you're doing your research?
Yes, recently I started thinking about this as well. So many things that we used to do as human being or human species let's say thousands years ago, or even 1,000, 2,000 years ago. So some of those things that if we right now think about those, they are barbaric, like many things that we can really talk about them. And there have been so many issues with them. But at that time, when they were practicing those things, they were not really important. So they were not really caring about the gladiators. You know, it was
Right.
the humane life was not there. The humane term was not there at that time, and that was a really normal practice. But we judge those people, and we go back and, you know, think about them. We look at them as a kind of barbaric activities, right?
Yeah.
So I think 1,000 years from now, or even 100 years from now, our grandchildren, so they're gonna actually look at us something like that, and they don't believe that we used to kill animals to harvest their meat.
Yeah.
I 100%
yeah.
agree with you. So yeah,
it is. I mean, it really is when you think. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, as a species, this is just something we've been doing for, you know, hundreds of thousands of years. So, you know, killing animals just seems like a normal practice. But, you know, if you really do think about it, it does seem like, wow, this is pretty messed up, you know?
yes, exactly.
But so now, beyond like the sort of ethics of, you know, being sort of meat eaters as a species, you know, what other benefits come from having this lab grown meat?
So there are so many actually benefits associated with that. So when we talk about the meat in general, so one of the things that is going to happen is, first of all, we don't need to use that much water and land. Right now, in order to produce, depending on the meat products, but for example, for producing 1 kilogram of beef, we need 15,000 gallons of water to produce 1 kilograms of beef, because we have to feed the plants, and we need to harvest the plants, feed the animal, keep them, raise them, process them. We need water from farm to factory. So that's one of the major issues. The other thing is the land. We have to apply so much land, and then so we have to remove, in many countries they don't have enough land, they have to remove the forests and to create more land to harvest the plant material to feed the animals, or develop some feed ingredients, and also the gas emission that they are generating, this industry or animal factories generating, is massive, and that's the main problem that we have these days with the climate change. So if we focus on the seafood product, also the problems, they are even huge compared to the terrestrial animals. For example, for the seafood product, one of the major issues that we have is the population of the fisheries the population of the seafood products that we harvest them from the fisheries activities. So they're going down significantly. So the pressure on the population is so much high. The other thing is microplastics. They are everywhere in the ocean. We had a nice project. We finished that and we published a paper, and we found between 100 to 180 pieces of microplastics per individual oyster. So because they are filter feeders and they are harvesting the food from the water, so they just harvest and collect the microplastics through their body. The other things is this, the viruses, emerging diseases, pathogenic bacteria, marine acidification. And also, when we talk about aquaculture, people, they think this is 100% sustainable. But one of the major issues that we have with aquaculture is still it depends on fisheries activities, because the major protein source for the feed is coming from fisheries activities, fish meal. And no one was able to 100% replace the fish meal to produce a really high quality seafood product. So these are the major issues that we are facing. Antibiotics that the industry is using to control the pathogenic bacteria, and creating super bugs or antibiotic resistant bacteria. That's another major issue that we have these days. So when we put everything together, the sustainability, food security, so many food deserts, so many people, they don't have access to this meat. So the price, everything. So when we put everything together, it's not sustainable. Our current agricultural practices, they are not sustainable enough. And the population is increasing really fast. We need to find another way or alternative way to feed the human.
Yeah, so I guess then it comes down to like just trying to produce this product at a rate that would be able to like provide for people around the world.
Exactly.
Now, I guess the other issue then is just the sort of convincing people of being able to move towards lab grown meat. What do you think about that issue? Because we've seen like with like genetically modified foods, a lot, so people will become, very concerned about it, where there's popping up of lots of all natural, grocery chains, etc. But how do you convince people that lab grown meat is not going to kill you?
Yeah. Sure, yeah. So one of the major part of our effort as an academy person, I'm talking about myself as an academy person, is outreach activities. And so when we say outreach activity, it's just about training the next generation of professionals, preparing them to go to the job market and be the leader for the future. And the other thing is educating the consumers and people. So we develop so many different fact sheets for people. We talk to them. We have different Ag Expo or Ag Days, field days, and we usually use those activities or those opportunities to introduce our research to people and educate them. So we already published so many different types of fact sheets for educating the consumers. And whenever that we have expo for children, for senior people, for families, we always share those fact sheets with them. I am working with so many different groups of activities so that they are trying to publish some children books about cellular agriculture, which is amazing. Okay. And they're targeting the group age between 4 to 6. So they are hitting from the beginning. So, and they're trying to educate them and introduce them to this field. That's something that we need to do that. And it's not going to happen overnight. So it is something that is going to take a little bit time. So probably 10 years, we are talking about 10 years, 5 years. So it's not going to happen within the next few months. And but if you compare the consumer perception compared to 2015, it's been changed a lot. Right now, many people, they are aware of this. Couple of years ago in 2018, when I wanted to introduce this research to people, just the public, they didn't know anything about this. But right now, at least I can say 90% of the people that I talk to them, they say, "Oh, we heard about this." They don't know that, but they heard about that. That's a big, that's a big thing. And so educating is one of the most important things, providing some more information, talking to podcasts like yours, talking to news, and exposing people to different, different types of food material and providing opportunities for them to taste them eventually. So that's something that we can work on that and educate consumers.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So like, what would your argument then be for someone who's like, who's really skeptical, and they get like, yeah, I understand, the benefits potentially of this, but how do I know it's actually safe? Like, what would your argument be to that person?
So that's a great question. So that's where the federal agency's role is become very important. So right now we have a really large grant from the USDA, NIFA, United States Department of Agriculture. And as a part of that grant, we are working with so many different companies. And as a part of this grant, we are testing the final product. And so technically we are working on the safety of the product. We are trying to understand the shelf life of the product and how long we can keep them in refrigerator condition or freezer condition when we cook them. So what would be the response to the cooking temperature? So compare that to the regular or conventional meat. that's something that we can come up with some information and valid data and talk based on the science with people. And the other thing is, these are just the food material. So at the end of the day, these are just food material. But for example, beer, the process is pretty similar to beer production. It's safe.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of having the yeast in the reactor, you have the cells in the reactor. They're just doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing technically. And so they're all safe.
Yeah. So the process isn't anything crazy. I guess people imagine some like, oh, taking all these toxic chemicals and making something,
No, you cannot use that. Yeah. Yeah. We cannot really use, I mean, technically you cannot really use any toxic, because assume that you use a toxic, those are the cells from mammalian animals or even other animals. They are more sensitive to any toxic material than human being. And so our body can probably get rid of some sort of toxicity, but cells, they don't have a liver, they don't have kidneys, so they cannot get rid of the toxicity. The moment that even some of the feed or food material goes up, so they cannot really actually tolerate that. So you need to optimize that. Even the food material can be so much for them, can be too much for them. They cannot digest them. So all I'm saying is they are more sensitive, and that's why we use them. We have been using cells in for toxicity studies because they are more sensitive than our body.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So it's actually using cells gives you a pretty good idea of safety, because cells will react pretty badly if something's not safe.
Yes, exactly. So technically, those are really indicators that, like the canaries that they used to use them for mining, the birds for the mining. So those are pretty similar to those, and the cells are very sensitive and susceptible to any material that they don't really like that.
Right, makes sense. Now, another aspect of your research, I guess, is on alternative proteins. So what exactly is an alternative protein?
So we do alternative proteins in general. It could be divided into different sections. Cellular agriculture is a part of alternative protein term, and insect-based protein or insects, those are alternative protein, and plant-based material. And also fungi-based material or fungi-based protein. So there are many companies right now that are producing meat from the fungi, and they're harvesting or producing them. Again, instead of producing beer or instead of producing cells, they're just producing fungi in those big reactors and harvesting them together. Overall, anything other than animal-based meat, it's considered as alternative proteins these days. Probably 15 years ago, alternative proteins was just plant-based material, but right now we are talking about different types of materials. And also it could be the hybrid. For example, cell-based material mixed with plant-based material. That could be another way to look at that. It doesn't necessarily need to be very pure. Or fungi-based plus cell-based. We can hybrid them, we can mix them and have the final product.
Yeah, I guess that, I mean, that also, I guess, makes sense to produce products that are like the non-meat versions for some people that don't want to eat meat. Though I guess I'd be curious to know what like people who are vegan, for example, what they would think of like lab-grown meat, since you're not harming any animals in the process of developing it. What does that, I wonder what impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is a debating topic right now, and I heard from some of my collaborators, and that they are working with the consumer perception studies, and also there are some published data around this topic, and it's very interesting that some percentage of vegan people that they showed interest in trying and even eating the cell-based meats. So because they believe that they don't harm animals, so that's then we can start eating the meat without, because there's no killing step in that processing method or production method. Some of them, they started showing some interest. Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I imagine that would make people like think twice a little bit about, okay, well,
Right.
is that acceptable or not? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it changes things. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in next 10 years or even next 5 years, we will have so many different new terms. And so the vegan that they are eating meat, but technically that meat is coming from the lab, right? So
Yeah.
that's just the terminology and how we are looking at the field and how we are looking at the vegan people or vegan term, right? So it's not 100% vegan, but at the same time, so you're not harming any animal, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if like vegans kind of split into multiple groups. Like some were like, oh, that's acceptable. Others were, oh, no, I'm still going to stay on the plant
Right.
side.
Exactly.
Um, so in terms of alternative proteins, you mentioned like, things like insects as well. How do you promote something like that? Because I think that there may draw the line for some people. They're like, I don't think I want to eat that.
It's very hard. I totally understand that. So whenever we talk about the insects research that we have in our lab, so many people, they just kind of they show the face, oh wow, we don't want to try that one.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So when I started working on the insects, I didn't want to actually develop any food material from them. I wanted to convert the waste stream from the food industry to valuable protein using black soldier fly, which is one of the non-edible protein or non-edible insects, because the way that we produce that. So we wanted to do that. It was very interesting that we were able to convert the waste stream from the vegetables or from brewery spent grain industry or seafood industry to the insects with high value. And then we fed them to fish and we got very interesting results. And then we started harvesting the protein and fat from these, separating or isolating them from these insects. Then I decided to focus more on developing some food material. It was very interesting. I started bringing some edible insects without flavor because the company that they were selling them, they had them with salt, pepper, barbecue,
Okay.
chili. Yeah, so I brought them here and then I started working with them and we tasted them in the lab. Some of my students, they really liked that. So we had different types of insects in the lab and we ate them. So they were, and technically they are in a really nice, fancy package, very, very, very interesting. And you can purchase them through Amazon. And but we brought them from another country. So we started working with them. And right now we are, so one of the major issues with insects in the Western countries is just the appearance, right? No one wants to eat the beetle or no one wants to eat the worm, right? So you don't want to see that. But if you extract the protein from them and use that protein to develop some other food material, that might be something very interesting because of insects protein, they are very nutritious. They have high level of protein and amino acids. They are very inexpensive to produce them, very environmentally friendly. And at the same time, they don't have any off flavor and the taste is really good technically. So, and you can mix that maybe with plant-based protein, with soy protein and develop a burger, mixed insects and soy protein to kind of help each other to enhance the texture of the burger. That's something very interesting. And as a matter of fact, you can find them in the US. There is a startup company that they are producing protein bar and chocolate with cricket protein. And you can find them in gas stations. I was at the gas station the other day and I saw it by myself and I texted my friend who is the CEO and founder of that startup company. And I said, well, so you got it. I mean, so I saw it in a gas station in the middle of nowhere. So it was very interesting. Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, I guess I could see, at some point people think like, well, are you able to grow, insects, protein or something like that in a lab because people don't want to harm the insects? Do you think that's a possibility at some point?
Insects in the lab, like the cell-based insect.
Yes, because like someone doesn't want to harm, the insects, they.
Sure, yeah. So, well, it's already been done. And my collaborator or my mentor, I would say, that I had this chance to work with him, Dr. Professor David Caplan at Tufts University, who is leading the largest cellular agriculture program in the world at Tufts University. And so he's the director of NICA, National Institute for Cellular Agriculture, that I am a part of that as well. So they are working on cell lines from the insects, and they were able to produce cells or grow the cells from insects in the lab. And as a matter of fact, it's much more easier than animal cell. Oh, I mean, insects considered as animals. So, I mean, mammalian cells or seafood cells. They don't need that much growth factors, and so it's much more easier to produce them.
Interesting. Yes. Okay. So do you think in the future that they will probably just move to producing sort of, insects in a laboratory versus just harvesting them, I guess? And
I think probably we have to do that at some point, because some of these edible insects, they are not probably, they're disappearing, and maybe we have to actually find another way to produce them, or their habitat is gone, so they cannot really harvest them. So right now, and also they're expensive because they don't produce them, they harvest them. They are wild produced animals. So they go to the forest and, different places and harvest them. Probably that's one of the main reasons that we need to go into that direction. The other thing is traceability, and making sure that it's coming from a place that we know that place, and probably lab is the best one, so we can have a full traceability control on them. And also the safety and many other reasons. Yes, we should definitely do that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of things that could drastically change about sort of the world of food and how it's produced. And it's interesting because people have always been manipulating food in different ways. As a species, we've been doing this for thousands of years with crops or whatever, and sort of this breeding crops in a certain way. And now with future technology, we're able to do this in these incredible ways in laboratories. So it's pretty interesting to see how this all works. So what are you currently researching in terms of your specific work right now?
Well, so my program here is Future Foods Lab and Cellular Agriculture Initiative. We may change the name of this program maybe 2 years, 3 years from now, because by then we are not cellular agriculture. It's not an initiative program anymore. So maybe 3 years from now. So under that, I work on different topics, because of my background. I work on food safety. I have a really large grant on COVID in the food supply chain. We work with the live actual virus, SARS-CoV-2. And so we work with microbial communities. So we use good bacteria to control pathogenic bacteria. And so that's called microbial community or microbiome. And again, alternative proteins, that's probably 90% of my focus at this moment. And I work with different types of protein sources like sorghum, different types of beans, pea protein, so different types of plant-based protein. And also we are working on extraction, optimization, developing products, enhancing the digestibility, improving the protein recovery, make it more cost effective for industry, enhance the flavor and taste. And also we work with different types of insects protein and algae protein. Also we focus on cellular agriculture. So we have different types of cell lines. We work on cell line development, scaffold development, media optimization, and also educating the next generation of professionals. We work on course development and making sure that we can prepare students to go to this field as the future leaders. It's very interesting. So I have students from biomedical engineering background that they are working in my lab. They have biomedical engineering background, but right now they are looking for, they are enrolled in food science department. When they graduate, they have a mix. She's gonna be the first one in the nation with this background. And I have students with chemical engineering background. And also I have students with biological systems engineering background, food science, biotechnology, cell biology. I have different groups of students and researchers working in my lab. And so they're gonna be really amazing and interesting for the job market in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like there's a lot going on then.
Yeah, it's a busy lab, so it's a busy lab.
And what's the best way for people to like follow you and keep track of your research?
So we have a website, and we haven't updated that yet because we are trying to match it with the NICA website, National Institute of Food Safety, National Institute of Cellular Agriculture. I'm sorry. So but that's one of the things that they can easily have access to my information. It's Future Foods Lab, and they can Google it. It brings it up, or it's in our website. My LinkedIn is another way to track my activities. I usually post a job or open position for students and some of my publications there. And Google Scholar, they can easily track my publications. These are the best way, or they can follow me on Twitter. And so I usually post my papers or any news there too. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing all this information. It seems Absolutely. Like a sort of a glimpse into the future. So
thank you so much. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. And I hope that we can talk about the future of the cellular agriculture at some point, maybe. So in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.